Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. This topic, we're actually going deep into gang stalking, or as I like to call it, digital gang stalking. This is something that I actually have firsthand knowledge on because it happened to me recently, and it was stems from my neighbors hacking my phone and my PC. And then wherever I would come home or leave, they would try to like yell different things out to me and just like basically mention whatever's on my screen. I have nothing to hide, wasn't doing anything crazy, but at the same time, it's just the fact that they violated my privacy. And whenever I would be outside, they would be yelling from whatever unit they were in. Of course, I tried to like go knock on their door and see exactly where they were coming from, but they always denied it. So I just ended up moving. But for some reason, people that they were friends with actually knew where I was about to move to, and the same thing started again at my new location. So I know this is something that other people have gone through. It's definitely not something that's in my head, for example, but it's something that literally happened, and I have recordings of them. So that's like one of the main things, actually getting evidence and taking it to the law. So what I decided to do is put this on the internet so people can be aware of these tactics, and these people can definitely be found out and persecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So sit back, listen, and enjoy the message.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, unpack some really complex topics, and help you get genuinely informed fast.
That's the goal.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a concept that, well, you hear it whispered about online. Sometimes it pops up in headlines. Gang stalking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a term used for what people claim is, coordinated harassment by groups.
Hmm.
And honestly, for a lot of people, it sounds pretty unsettling, kind of mysterious.
It definitely does.
So our deep dive today is going to explore where this whole idea came from, look into the advanced technologies people say are involved,
Right.
examine the clinical side, the cultural angles, and really importantly, look at what steps someone might take if they believe they're targeted, and why proving it is just so difficult.
Yeah, that challenge of proof is key.
We've really dug through a lot for this one. Academic studies, tech analyses, even some congressional testimony, trying to give you that full picture.
And it's such a multifaceted topic, isn't it? It's sensitive, definitely. Our aim here isn't to say this is real or this isn't real, but more to just distill what the sources say about the phenomenon itself.
Exactly. Understand the different dimensions.
Yeah, and you see this blend of, well, intense personal experience, actual technological possibilities, and these bigger societal worries we all have about privacy. That mix is what makes it so compelling to look at.
That's a really good point. It highlights the sensitivity, right? We're exploring, not judging. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. How did this idea of gang stalking even emerge?
Well, it evolved, didn't it?
Yeah, like stalking as a crime, that came about in the 80s, mostly focused on one person harassing another, often, domestic violence related.
Right, the single perpetrator model.
But then late 90s, you start seeing reports trickling out, people describing harassment by groups. Early terms were things like organized stalking or group stalking,
Yeah.
mainly popping up in online forums back
Even
then.
before it was really formally documented anywhere else.
Exactly. And this is where the internet just pours fuel on the fire, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Amplification.
The actual term gang stalking really picked up steam around, say, 2000 to 2005. Platforms like Facebook, YouTube, dedicated websites, they became places where people could find each other.
A community, in a sense.
Right. These self-identified targeted individuals, or TIs, they started sharing stories online. And the experiences were often remarkably similar. Claims of constant electronic surveillance, noise campaigns like, neighbors banging on walls constantly, weird sounds, and even street theater, where strangers would apparently act bizarrely towards them in public.
And often these accounts included much bigger claims, right? Like government conspiracies, even things like mind control programs.
Yeah, really big, sometimes quite elaborate narratives.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the rise of these online communities was just crucial. It took what might have felt like isolated, maybe confusing personal experiences.
Right.
And kind of wove them into a shared phenomenon. It validated feelings, amplified the narratives for everyone involved, and this eventually caught the eye of researchers.
Like that Sheridan and James study.
Exactly. The 2015 study, it was really the first proper empirical look They analyzed, I think, 128 self-reported victims.
And what did they find?
Well, the headline finding was pretty stark.
Yeah.
100% of those individuals showed clinically significant paranoia or delusions.
100%. Wow.
Yeah. So that study gives a critical perspective. It suggests that while the feeling of being targeted is incredibly real for these people, their interpretation often aligns with known clinical conditions. They also found really severe psychological distress, depression, PTSD symptoms, often worse than what you see in victims of single stalkers.
So that brings up the whole diagnostic debate then.
It really does. Most clinical experts tend to view these beliefs as persecutory delusions, often linked to things like schizophrenia, delusional disorder, maybe severe anxiety. But there's another perspective too. Some researchers talk about it as a cultural concept of distress, a CCD.
A CCD, what does that mean exactly?
Think of it as a culturally specific way that people experience and express psychological suffering. In this case, maybe reflecting these widespread modern anxieties about surveillance everywhere, losing privacy in the digital age.
Huh. So like society's fears manifesting in individuals.
Kind of, yeah. It's an interesting lens how global anxieties can shape personal experience.
So you have the clinical view pointing towards delusions. But are there cases where it's not just dismissed? Does the research acknowledge any, like, gray areas?
That's a really important question. And yes, while the clinical view is strong, there are definitely controversies. Critics worry that these online groups, while providing support,
Right.
might actually make the paranoia worse. Maybe discourage people from seeking psychiatric help, creating a kind of echo chamber.
Right, a feedback loop.
But then you have victim advocates pushing back hard. They insist the harassment is real. They point to, inconsistent responses from law enforcement and the undeniable vulnerabilities of modern tech.
Because the tools do exist.
Exactly. They argue that just because you can't find traditional proof easily doesn't mean it's not happening. And recent studies estimate that somewhere between, say, 0.17% and 0.66% of adults in Western countries report experiences like this. It really underscores this complex knot of psychological distress, digital culture, and these deep societal fears about privacy and control.
That tension is really clear. The distress is real, documented. But then you have these claims involving surveillance tech that, kind of disturbingly, is real too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pivot there. Let's explore the actual tools and tactics that the research we looked at says could be used for covert surveillance. What about the common stuff first? Maybe things people wouldn't even expect.
Well, yeah, you might be surprised. We can start right in your own home, potentially. Think about hidden cameras and microphones.
Like spy movie stuff.
Sort of, but miniaturized and hidden in everyday objects. Smoke detectors, phone chargers, picture frames even. They can stream audio and video wirelessly.
Okay, creepy. Is there a downside for the person planting them?
The catch is they usually give off radio frequencies, so they can be detected with RF scanners or just found with a really thorough visual check.
All right, what else?
Then there's exploiting your IoT devices, smart speakers like Alexa, Nest thermostats, even your phone or laptop webcam.
Hacking them.
Yeah, potentially hacking them through malware to listen in or turn on the camera remotely. Though typically that requires getting access to the victim's network first. So there's usually a breach involved initially.
Okay, so even our smart homes aren't necessarily safe havens. What about tracking movement? People talk about being followed.
For tracking, you've got straightforward GPS trackers, small devices, sometimes magnetic you can stick on a car, or vehicle-mounted ones.
Right.
And then there are automated license plate readers, ALPRs. Those systems track vehicles pretty effectively.
What are the limitations there?
Pretty practical ones, usually. GPS trackers run out of battery, and they often use cellular signals, which are, again, detectable if you know what to look for. But yeah, those are the more basic tracking methods.
Okay, basic. But still worrying. Let's get into the more sophisticated stuff. You hear about things like Stingrays being used by law enforcement. What about those?
Right. Moving up the ladder. Signal interception is a big one. IMSI catchers, often called Stingrays, basically mimic cell towers.
They trick your phone.
Exactly. Your phone connects to it instead of the real tower, allowing interception of calls, texts, data. Then you've got things like Wi-Fi pineapples.
What they do?
They can perform man-in-the-middle attacks on Wi-Fi networks. So if you connect to a malicious hotspot set up by one, it can potentially intercept your internet traffic.
Wow. Is there any way to detect that kind of activity?
Well, the thing about these more sophisticated tools is, while powerful, they often leave digital traces, like footprints, Network logs might show unusual activity, unexpected connections. So investigators can sometimes find evidence, but it requires technical analysis. They're not completely invisible.
That's slightly reassuring, I guess.
Mhm.
But what about the really unsettling claims? You mentioned mind control earlier. Any tech touch on psychological manipulation?
Yeah, this is where it gets into some truly fascinating and frankly quite disturbing territory. Psychological manipulation tools.
Like what?
Our sources describe things like directional audio devices. Think LR aids or maybe laser microphones. These can project sound like whispers, specific phrases directly at a person.
So only they hear it. Like a spotlight for sound.
Pretty much. Imagine hearing a message like stay safe, but nobody else around you does. The challenge, though, is it needs really precise targeting, and things like wind or background noise can interfere.
Okay, what else?
Even more covert, potentially, are subliminal messaging technologies.
Seriously, does that stuff actually work?
Well, the research describes tech using, say, very high-frequency sound waves outside normal hearing range, or even silent SMS messages sent to a phone.
Silent SMS.
Yeah, the idea is it could remotely activate the phone's microphone, maybe embedding trigger phrases subliminally or just capturing ambient audio without you knowing. How effective it is? That likely varies a lot depending on the person. Susceptibility differs.
That is deeply unsettling. Are there other categories?
Yeah, one more area is cyber-physical integration, and then touching on military-grade tools.
Cyber-physical,
Yeah.
like hacking building systems.
Exactly. Imagine compromising access controls to mess with doors or elevators, or hacking smart thermostats and lighting to create environmental stress, making it too hot, too cold, flickering lights constantly.
How would you even defend against that?
Robust physical security audits are the main countermeasure there, checking who has access, securing the networks controlling these systems.
And military grade.
Think RFID skimmers that can clone key cards, maybe even for restricted areas. Or thermal and electromagnetic imagers that can potentially detect movement through walls.
This sounds like spy fiction, but you're saying this tech exists.
The tech exists. Now, the crucial insight, and this came up in congressional testimony we reviewed, is that an estimated 80% of this kind of alleged covert surveillance seems to rely on commercial, off-the-shelf devices.
80%. So not necessarily super high-tech government gear.
Often not. It's everyday tech being repurposed maliciously, which is chilling because it means the tools are much more accessible. And this is made worse by gaps in legislation, like different state laws about consent for recording, which can, unfortunately, enable abuse.
That accessibility point is really stark. Okay, so given that these tools are out there and people do make these claims about gang stalking, what can someone actually do? What are the practical evidence-based steps if you genuinely believe you're being targeted like this?
Right, moving towards action. It's about empowering listeners with what the sources suggest.
First thing, it seems, is document everything, right?
Absolutely crucial. Our sources really hammer this point. Detailed documentation, every incident. Timestamps, locations, exactly what happened, who was around, any observable details. The more specific, the better.
Makes sense. And what about checking for devices?
Conducting RF sweeps is highly recommended. Using radio frequency scanners in your home, your car, your workplace to check for hidden bugs or cameras that might be transmitting.
Okay, documentation, RF sweeps.
Yeah.
But then what? How do you take that suspicion, that logbook, and turn it into something actionable, like proof?
That's the massive hurdle. How do you bridge that gap from belief to demonstrable evidence? And what are the official routes?
Yeah.
The research suggests reporting to law enforcement, specifically the FBI's Cyber Division, through their ic3.gov portal.
Why them particularly?
Because they track patterns that cross state lines or jurisdictions, which could be relevant if it's claimed to be coordinated activity by a group across different places.
Okay. Any legal avenues?
Potentially. Depending on where you are in the situation, you might be able to request building access logs, keycard swipes or camera footage under data privacy laws. If there's unusual activity recorded, that could be evidence.
But how does law enforcement actually find this stuff? If they investigate, what methods do they use?
When they investigate claims of covert surveillance, they have several tools. Digital forensics is huge, analyzing computers, phones, network logs for malware, suspicious connections, data being sent out.
Okay.
RF spectrum analysis, like the sweeps we mentioned, but more sophisticated, to pinpoint unauthorized radio transmissions and locate the source device.
Right.
Network monitoring to spot unusual patterns of data leaving a network. And of course, physical sweeps using professional gear like thermal imagers or nonlinear junction detectors to find hidden electronics, even if they're turned off.
So they do have methods,
Right.
but It still sounds incredibly hard to prove.
And that's the critical takeaway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We have to reinforce how difficult it is. The studies we looked at on gang stalking specifically state that few legal cases validate gang stalking claims due to lack of evidence.
Few legal cases.
Yeah,
Despite all the claims and the existence of the tech.
exactly. It really highlights this major gap between a person's deeply felt experience, the fear, the perceived patterns, the distress, and the kind of verifiable, concrete proof needed for legal action or even sometimes just convincing investigators. It's a huge challenge.
It really is a complex, kind of difficult landscape.
Yeah.
We've gone from the history of this gang stalking idea, the very real distress involved, through the array of surveillance tech that, actually exists and could be misused,
Right.
and landed on the practical steps someone can try, but also the stark reality of how hard it is to prove. We really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer, more evidence-based handle on what's a really complicated and often misunderstood topic.
Definitely. And maybe if we connect this back to the bigger picture, just a final thought to leave you with. In this age where, real surveillance tech is getting more powerful all the time,
Yeah.
and our understanding of psychology, perception, and distress is also evolving, how do you personally critically evaluate claims like these? How do you navigate your own sense of privacy and security in this world?
That's a really important question, something for all of us to think about.
Yeah. It goes way beyond just this one topic. It encourages us all to be, more informed, more discerning.
Couldn't agree more. Keep exploring, keep asking questions. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you next time.